My breath catches as I recall the moment it began, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and sin. His silhouette filled the doorway, a fleeting shadow that burned into my soul. I was submerged in the bath, steam curling around me like a lover's whisper, when Ethan, my husband's son, pushed the door open. No knock, no warning, just the creak of hinges and the weight of his gaze. My heart thundered, not from shame, but from the sudden, electric awareness of being seen. Water lapped against my skin, a caress too gentle for the storm brewing within me. I should have screamed, covered myself, demanded he leave. Instead, I met his eyes, and in that silent collision, something unspoken ignited. He froze, his apology half formed, but his stare lingered, tracing the curve of my shoulder above the water's edge. I felt it like a touch, a spark that set my pulse racing. "I didn't know you were here, Claire," he murmured, voice low, rough, as if the words fought to escape. But he didn't turn away. And God help me, I didn't want him to. The loneliness that had gnawed at me for months, years, under James's endless business trips and distracted promises, surged forward. Ethan's presence filled the void, his attention a balm to my neglected heart. I rose from the water, deliberate, letting the droplets cascade down my skin, each one a dare. The towel hung just out of reach, and I made no move for it. His breath hitched, a sound that stirred something primal in me. "Close the door," I whispered, not specifying whether I meant behind him or to shut him out. He stepped inside, the click of the lock echoing like a vow. The space between us shrank, charged with a current neither of us could deny. His hand brushed my arm, tentative, testing, and I leaned into it, craving the warmth of connection. Our lips met, urgent, hungry, a collision of need and forbidden want. His hands roamed, not with the hesitation of inexperience, but with a reverence that made my skin sing. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, as if proximity could erase the lines we were crossing. The tile was cool against my back, a stark contrast to the heat of his body pressed against mine. Every touch was a conversation, his fingertips tracing my spine, my sighs answering in kind. We moved in a rhythm older than guilt, a dance of breath and pulse, each moment stretching into eternity. I felt alive, gloriously, dangerously alive. His kisses trailed down my neck, each one a spark that threatened to consume me. My hands found the planes of his chest, memorizing the strength beneath his shirt, the heartbeat that raced in time with mine. The world outside that bathroom ceased to exist. There was only the press of his skin, the cadence of our breaths, the unspoken agreement that this was wrong, but undeniable. I arched into him, seeking more, and he answered with a fervor that matched my own. The steam enveloped us, a cocoon of heat and secrecy as we surrendered to the tide. But even in the haze of desire, a shadow lingered. James's face flashed in my mind, his distracted smiles, his promises of soon that never came. I shoved the thought away, clinging to Ethan's warmth, to the way he made me feel wanted, needed, seen. Yet the guilt was there, a quiet undertow beneath the waves of pleasure. I knew this was a betrayal, not just of my husband, but of the vows I'd made to myself. Still, I couldn't stop. Not when Ethan's hands framed my face, his eyes searching mine as if I were the only truth he'd ever known. Not when his touch promised to fill the emptiness I'd carried too long. We parted, breathless, the air heavy with what we'd done. His fingers lingered on my wrist, a silent plea, but reality crept in like a thief. "This can't happen again," I said, my voice trembling with a conviction I didn't feel. He nodded, But his eyes told a different story, one of longing, of a fire that wouldn't be easily extinguished. I wrapped the towel around myself, the fabric a flimsy shield against the truth. He left, the door closing softly, but the echo of our encounter reverberated in my bones. That night, alone in the bed I shared with James, I replayed every moment. The memory of Ethan's touch was a flame I couldn't douse, warming me even as it burned. I told myself it was a mistake, a lapse born of weakness. But deep down, I knew it was more. It was a hunger awakened, a need that had been starved too long. I stared at the ceiling, James's absence a tangible weight, and wondered how I'd face Ethan in the morning. Would he look at me with the same intensity? Would I crumble under it again? The house was silent, but my mind roared. I was a wife, a woman bound by promises, yet I felt like a stranger in my own skin. Ethan had seen me, truly seen me, and that glimpse of connection was a drug I wasn't sure I could resist. The guilt was a knife, sharp and unrelenting, but the desire was stronger, a pulse that thrummed beneath my guilt. I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come. But all I saw was him, his eyes, his hands, the way he'd made me feel whole for the first time in years. I didn't know then how far this would go, how deeply it would cut. I only knew that something had shifted, a door had opened, and I wasn't sure I could, or wanted to, close it. The loneliness that had defined me was still there, but now it had a companion, a forbidden flame that threatened to consume everything I was. The days that followed were a fever dream, each moment laced with the scent of our secret. I moved through the house like a ghost, haunted by the memory of Ethan's touch, yet drawn to him with a force I couldn't resist. The kitchen, the hallway, the quiet corners of our too large home became stages for stolen glances, each look a spark that threatened to reignite the fire. I told myself I was strong, that I could bury what had happened, but my body betrayed me. My skin flushed at the sound of his footsteps. My breath quickened when he passed too close. The guilt was a constant companion, a weight that pressed against my chest, but it was no match for the hunger that clawed at me. It happened again in the library, late one evening when James was away, his absence a void that Ethan filled. I was shelving books, seeking distraction in routine, when he appeared, his presence a quiet storm. "Claire," he said, my name a caress, and I turned, knowing I should walk away but unable to move. He stepped closer, the air between us humming with unspoken need. His hand grazed mine, a fleeting touch that sent a current through me, and I felt the world tilt. "We shouldn't," I whispered, but my voice was a plea, not a refusal. His eyes held mine, dark with the same longing that burned in me, and I knew we were lost. He kissed me, slow at first, as if savouring the taste of forbidden fruit, then deeper, a tide pulling us under. My hands found his shoulders, clinging to him as if he were my anchor in a sea of sin. The bookshelves pressed against my back, their edges a sharp reminder of reality, but I didn't care. His lips traced the curve of my jaw, my neck, each kiss a note in a symphony of want. I arched into him, my body seeking the rhythm of his, and he answered with a touch that was both tender and fierce. His fingers wove through my hair, tilting my head to meet his gaze, and in that moment, I was no longer James's wife, no longer bound by vows. I was simply Claire, alive and desired. We sank to the floor, the rug soft beneath us, a contrast to the urgency of our movements. His hands explored me, mapping the contours of my body with a reverence that made my heart ache. I felt the heat of his skin through his shirt, the steady thrum of his pulse beneath my fingertips, and it was as if we were one, our breaths and heartbeats synchronized in a dance of forbidden intimacy. The world outside faded, leaving only the cadence of our connection, the rise and fall of our bodies as we moved together. Each touch was a confession, each sigh a surrender, and I let myself drown in the sensation, in the illusion that this could be enough. But even as I lost myself in him, the guilt gnawed at me, a shadow that grew bolder with every encounter. I saw James in my mind, his tired eyes, his distracted affection, and the betrayal cut deeper. Yet Ethan's attention was a drug, filling the emptiness James had left behind. He whispered my name, his voice a tether that kept me from drifting into despair, and I clung to it, to him, to the fleeting moments when I felt whole. Our encounters grew bolder, more reckless, a stolen kiss in the hallway, a touch that lingered too long in the kitchen, each one a step further into the abyss. One night, in the guest room where the shadows hid our shame, we pushed the boundaries further. The door was locked, the house silent, but the risk hung heavy in the air. He undressed me slowly, his hands trembling with a mix of desire and restraint, and I felt like a canvas under his touch, painted with longing and regret. His lips followed where his hands had been, a trail of fire that left me breathless, and I reciprocated, my fingers tracing the lines of his body, memorizing the feel of him. We moved with a desperate grace, our bodies entwined in a rhythm that spoke of need and defiance. The bed creaked beneath us, a quiet protest against our sin, but we were too far gone to care. Afterward, lying in the dark, his arm around me, I felt the weight of what we'd done. The warmth of his body was a comfort, but it couldn't silence the voices in my head. "This is wrong," I said, my voice barely a whisper, as if speaking it aloud would make it real. He tightened his hold, his breath warm against my shoulder. "I know," he replied, but there was no regret in his tone, only a quiet resolve that mirrored my own conflict. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for pulling me into this, but I couldn't. He was as much a victim of this hunger as I was, drawn to me by the same need for connection. The days blurred, each one marked by the push and pull of desire and guilt. I avoided James's calls, unable to bear the sound of his voice, knowing I was betraying him with every stolen moment. Ethan and I were careful, but the secrecy only heightened the thrill, the danger of being caught a twisted aphrodisiac. I caught myself watching him, memorizing the way he moved, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. It was more than physical now, a bond forged in shared vulnerability, and that scared me more than the act itself. I stood at the edge of a precipice, knowing I should step back, but unable to resist the pull of the fall. Each encounter with Ethan was a lifeline, a reminder that I was more than the lonely wife I'd become. But the cost was steep, and I felt it in the quiet moments, when the house was still and my thoughts were loud. I was unraveling, piece by piece, and I didn't know how to stop. The line between caution and recklessness blurred, each encounter with Ethan pulling me deeper into a web I no longer recognized. The house, once a sanctuary of routine, now pulsed with secrets, its walls bearing witness to our transgressions. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound, became a warning we ignored, our hunger outweighing the fear of discovery. My days were a tightrope walk, balancing the facade of normalcy with the fevered anticipation of his touch. The guilt was a constant ache, a bruise I pressed with every stolen moment, yet the thrill of being wanted, of being seen, kept me tethered to him. It was in the garden, under the cloak of twilight, that we pushed the boundaries too far. The air was heavy with the scent of blooming roses, their petals a soft contrast to the urgency that drove us. We'd slipped outside, seeking the cover of dusk, but the open sky felt like an accusation. Ethan's hand found mine, pulling me behind the arbor, where the shadows offered a fragile shield. His kiss was fierce, a claim that left no room for hesitation, and I melted into it, my body answering before my mind could protest. The grass was cool beneath my knees as we sank together, the earth grounding us even as we defied its order. His hands traced the curve of my waist, a slow exploration that set my skin alight. I felt the rhythm of his breath, hot against my throat, and I arched into him, craving the connection that made me feel whole. Our movements were a dance, deliberate yet desperate, each touch a note in a forbidden melody. The world narrowed to the press of his body, the cadence of our shared pulse, the way his fingers wove through mine as if to anchor us against the tide. I whispered his name, a prayer and a plea, and he answered with a fervour that matched my own, our bodies moving in sync, a silent vow to chase this fleeting ecstasy. But the risk was palpable, a spectre that lingered at the edge of every moment. A car's headlights swept across the street, and we froze, hearts pounding, the spell broken by the threat of exposure. We disentangled, breathless, my hands trembling as I smoothed my dress, the fabric a flimsy barrier against the truth. "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice raw with fear and longing. Ethan's eyes met mine, dark with a resolve that both comforted and terrified me. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted, and the honesty in his words cut deeper than any accusation. The near miss haunted me, a reminder of how close we'd come to ruin. Yet it didn't stop us. If anything, the danger fueled our recklessness, each encounter more brazen than the last. In the laundry room, with the hum of the washer masking our whispers, his hands found me again, lifting me onto the counter as if I weighed nothing. The air was thick with the scent of detergent and desire, and I clung to him, my legs wrapped around his waist, seeking the heat of his skin to drown out the cold grip of guilt. His kisses were a lifeline, each one pulling me further from the woman I'd been, the woman who'd promised fidelity and meant it. I saw James in every shadow, his absence a ghost that watched us. His calls grew more frequent, his voice tinged with a concern I couldn't face. I let them go to voicemail, each unanswered ring a nail in the coffin of our marriage. Ethan became my world, his touch the only thing that kept the loneliness at bay. But the guilt was a poison, seeping into every moment of joy. I caught my reflection in the mirror one morning, my eyes hollow, my lips swollen from stolen kisses, and I barely recognized myself. Who was this woman, so consumed by desire that she'd forsaken everything she'd vowed to uphold? We took risks that bordered on madness. One afternoon, in the study where James kept his files, Ethan pressed me against the desk, his hands urgent, his breath ragged. The papers scattered beneath us, a chaotic testament to our indiscretion. I felt the edge of the desk bite into my thighs, a sharp reminder of the line we'd crossed. But I didn't pull away. His touch was a fire that consumed my doubts, and I surrendered to it, my body arching to meet his, our rhythm a defiance of the world outside. The door was unlocked, the house quiet, but not empty, and the thrill of danger only heightened the intensity, each moment a gamble we couldn't afford to lose. Afterward, as we lay tangled in the aftermath, the weight of our actions settled over me like a shroud. "What are we doing, Ethan?" I whispered, my voice breaking. He didn't answer, just held me closer, his silence louder than any confession. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for pulling me into this abyss, but I couldn't. He was as lost as I was, drawn to me by the same need that drove me to him. We were two broken pieces, fitting together in a way that was both perfect and perverse. The house felt smaller now, its walls closing in with every secret we added to its foundation. I lived in constant fear of discovery, my heart racing at every unexpected sound. Yet I couldn't stop, couldn't deny the pull of Ethan's gaze, the way his touch made me feel alive. The guilt was a chain, binding me to my betrayal, but the desire was stronger, a current that swept me away. I was drowning, and I didn't know if I wanted to be saved. The edge of ruin loomed closer, a spectre that haunted every stolen moment with Ethan. The house, once a haven, now felt like a cage, its silence heavy with the weight of our secrets. I moved through my days in a haze, torn between the fire of his touch and the ice of my guilt. Each encounter was a step toward destruction, yet I couldn't turn back, couldn't deny the part of me that came alive in his arms. The woman I'd been, James's wife, faithful, steadfast, slipped further away, replaced by someone I both craved and despised. It was in the attic, amid forgotten boxes and dust-laden memories, that the truth began to unravel. We'd sought refuge there, driven by a need that bordered on obsession, the risk of discovery now a twisted thrill. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and longing, the single bulb casting shadows that danced across Ethan's face. His hands found me, urgent, pulling me into a kiss that tasted of desperation and defiance. I pressed myself against him, my body seeking the rhythm we'd perfected, each movement a rebellion against the life I'd chosen. The floorboards creaked beneath us, a quiet warning we ignored, lost in the heat of our connection. His fingers traced the curve of my spine, a slow caress that set my skin ablaze, and I arched into him, my breath catching as our bodies aligned. The attic was a world apart, a place where vows and consequences couldn't reach, and we surrendered to it, our movements a symphony of need and surrender. His lips followed the path of his hands, leaving trails of fire across my collarbone, my throat, each kiss a promise that this moment was enough. I clung to him, my nails digging into his shoulders, anchoring myself against the tide of guilt that threatened to pull me under. We moved as one, our pulses synchronized, the world reduced to the cadence of our shared sin. But the illusion shattered with a sound, a car door slamming in the driveway. My heart stopped, the spell broken by the reality of James's return. Ethan froze, his eyes wide with the same panic that gripped me. We scrambled to dress, our hands trembling, the air thick with fear. "Go," I whispered, my voice barely audible, and he nodded, slipping down the attic stairs with a silence that belied the chaos within us. I smoothed my hair, my dress, trying to erase the evidence of our betrayal, but my reflection in a dusty mirror told the truth. I was a woman undone. James's voice called out, warm, unsuspecting, as he entered the house. "Claire? You home?" Each syllable was a knife, cutting through the haze of my desire. I descended the stairs, forcing a smile, my heart pounding with the fear that he'd see the truth in my eyes. He kissed my cheek, his touch a stark contrast to Ethan's, and I felt the weight of my betrayal settle deeper. Dinner was a blur, his stories of meetings and deals washing over me as I nodded, my thoughts consumed by the man across the table, Ethan, his gaze carefully averted, his presence a silent accusation. That night, alone in our bed, James reached for me, his hands gentle, familiar. I froze, the memory of Ethan's touch too fresh, too vivid. Not tonight, I murmured, turning away, and the hurt in his eyes was a wound I couldn't soothe. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the guilt now a living thing, clawing at my chest. I saw every moment with Ethan, the bathroom, the library, the garden, the attic. Each one a brick in the wall I'd built between me and the life I'd promised to uphold. I was drowning in my own choices, and the shore felt impossibly far. The next morning, Ethan found me in the kitchen, his eyes searching mine. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, and I nodded, knowing this moment had been inevitable. We slipped into the garage, the space cold and sterile, a fitting backdrop for what was to come. "This has to stop, Claire," he said, and the words were a blade cutting through the fragile bond we'd forged. "I can't keep doing this to him, to us." His voice broke, and I saw the same conflict in him that tore at me, desire warring with duty, love tangled with shame. I wanted to argue, to cling to the illusion that we could keep this secret forever, but the truth was undeniable. "I know," I whispered, my throat tight with unshed tears, "but I don't know how to let you go." He stepped closer, his hand brushing my cheek, and for a moment I thought we'd fall again, drawn back into the fire. But he pulled away, his resolve stronger than mine, and left me standing there, alone with the echo of our sin. The days that followed were a reckoning. I avoided Ethan, each glance a reminder of what we'd lost, what we'd never truly had. James's presence was a constant, his affection a mirror reflecting my betrayal. I threw myself into routine, cooking, cleaning, anything to silence the voices in my head. But the guilt was relentless, a shadow that followed me everywhere. I dreamed of Ethan, of the moments when I'd felt alive, and woke with tears on my cheeks, the weight of my choices crushing me. One evening, as I sorted through old photos, I found a picture of James and me, smiling, in love. The woman in that photo was a stranger, her eyes unburdened by the secrets I now carried. I traced her face, wondering if I could ever be her again, if I could rebuild what I'd broken. The house was quiet, James asleep upstairs, Ethan in his room, and I sat alone, the truth a heavy mantle around my shoulders. I had to choose, between the life I'd vowed to live and the desire that had awakened me, between redemption and ruin. I didn't know what the future held, whether I could mend the fractures in my marriage, or if the secret would one day spill out, destroying everything. But in that moment, I knew I couldn't keep running. The fire with Ethan had burned bright, but it had left scars, and I had to face them, to decide who I would become in the aftermath. The edge of ruin was close, but I wasn't there yet, and maybe, just maybe, I could find a way back.